this can. All right. So I'm going to send you all a link, and this is kind of like one of the sheets I give my clients. So you're really going to see me in teacher mode today. What I'm here to teach you today, and just to be like fully transparent so you know exactly what you're in for, I am here to show you the 4 things that I help my clients with the most that they get stuck on. And so often we think psychic development is like what we do when our eyes are closed, right? What we do when we finally, it's like 8 p.m. at night and we're like, oh my gosh, like I've got the time now. And I'm here to break that myth for you. And I'm here to show you things you can focus on in your everyday life that are going to help you be psychic. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about me in case you don't know. And I know so many people don't know, how did I get into this weird and wonderful job of being a psychic development teacher. So I had a near-death accident in 2017. And on that very spot on that freeway, my grandmother came through and she was like, don't put your foot on the brake. And I was just hearing her words and sensing her energy. And I was on the phone with my phone on Bluetooth at the time to my partner. And my car was like swiveling out of control. And I didn't put my foot on the brake. And that was the only reason my car didn't flip and roll. And after that moment, nothing happened. There was no more spirit. There was no more messages. There was just this undeniable shaking feeling that I had to be able to do the thing I did in that moment again and again and again. It was this undeniable shaking of like, fuck, like I'm missing a part of me, an antenna of me that should be working. And I only reached it when shit hit the fan. And I had this undeniable feeling that it should be always. So I spent then 3 years every single Thursday and Wednesday seeing 2 different psychic development teachers. I started to then do online training before it even became big in COVID. And I started to go to every psychic medium I could find and every person I could. And trust me, there weren't that many of them back then. And I started to have these ridiculous amounts of readings. And all they ever said to me was like, you're intuitive and you're having some life problems. And you like probably should go to counseling and learn how to like chill out. And I was like, at the time, had PTSD. And I was like this heightened fighting monster. Like every day felt like a fucking slug. Like I was pushing myself up a hill just to get through the day, to live a life I don't even know if I truly wanted to live. But I was in such a state of survival. I was like, well, I have no choice because I've just got to pay the bills. Like, isn't this the point of being human? And I realized that that was what the asleep state is. And I'm going to go through the 8 levels of psychic development. And when we are asleep, right, so often we think it's not based on knowledge. So many people are like, oh, like you're not a conspiracy theorist. You're not open, right? You're not open to hearing these weird, wonderful concepts. But what being asleep truly is when we no longer believe we have other possibilities. It's when our life is dictated by the external world only. It's not, there is no level of optimism that things will get better, things will improve, and you no longer feel like the writer of your story. And this is the asleep state and the exact state I came from. I used to have 5 to 6 panic attacks every single day, right? And now I'm like, I couldn't even tell you how many years it has been, right? And I feel so blessed to say that because most nights I couldn't sleep through the night without having reoccurring dreams. And I really do quote my healing to becoming intuitive, because becoming intuitive isn't actually about having just this amazing spirit team that tell you what to do. It's so much more than that, because if you can actually connect to your spirit team, you at some unconscious or conscious level realize that there's something greater than you, right? That there is a higher divine intelligence at work, that there is a bigger reason to the picture, right? And when we realize this is what shapes psychic development, and it's not what we do with our eyes closed and we're praying like, oh my gosh, give me a sign, give me a sign, give me a sign, right? It's not that, right? It's actually living psychic is ultimately allowing us to feel safe in the human experience, like there is an orchestration of a divine blueprint. And that is a safety that I can't describe to you until you go on this magical experience of connecting to yourself. And you'll see how that all flows through. All of these gifts that I want to give you today are really pieces of wisdom and knowledge, so you can pinpoint where you are on your journey and go, cool, I'm here. And I hope that this will then allow you to be like, then I want to be here. And I'm going to give you the step and the exact next step I would take if I was there on that journey today. So you're going to get lots of wisdom and you're going to get lots of lessons. So I hope this inspires you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you all if you could chuck in the chat box how you're feeling on a scale of 1 to 10, because I just kind of want to see where we are before I like pull up a Google sheet and start into teacher mode and get you like all in it. I would love to hear how you are. Whilst we do that, I'm going to pull up my Google sheet. Alexandra's a 6. Share. I'm just having technical difficulties. This was always meant to happen. I'm good, excited to learn. Jody, I love that. All right, here we go. Chrome is finally ticking over. So often, right, in this world, we think being psychic is what happens when we finally have time, right? And it's not. It's not. It is not the angel messages you're getting. It's not when you feel like you're connected. It's actually so much deeper than that. Because the reason you're getting angel numbers is because spirit can't actually connect to you in any other way. Right. And I always say to people, and it's like people, and I always am at the moment, I've got like an influx of people who are super spiritual at nighttime. And they're getting all of these messages and these stories at night. And they're like, yeah, but like, how do I decode them and what do they mean? And I don't wake up remembering them. And I always say to people, you shouldn't be being spiritual at nighttime. The reason that is happening is because there's no time in the daytime, right? There is no time for you to finally get that energetic transmission that you're looking for in the day. Probably number one, because your nervous system is wired. So like you're going to see here, like your nervous system is your antenna for spirit, right? Your body is your sacred vessel, right? And it is your phone receiver. And I always use this metaphor for spirit, that spirit is always sitting there texting you on their iPhone hitting send, right? But like you've got your data off and they're trying to come through in those stupid green text messages that like don't work 90% of the time to another iPhone. And that's because you're off, right? It's because you're stressed about what's happening on work on Friday and we're in Wednesday because we're future tripping, AKA having anxiety, right? And we're unregulated and we're pissed off in traffic and we feel this undeniable feeling in our system like something's not clicking, what some people call blocks, right? We're missing the messages. That's what that frustration, agitation is. Something in life isn't making sense. And genuinely, that sense, and this is what I didn't understand about my life, and being a person who was like, I'm a Virgo Capricorn moon. So, like, just like put that together. I am like a little like stress rocket in the past on life. I was like a to-do list girly who was always worried about next week, not this week. And I was always trying to get something better because it was never okay, because I was never safe in my body, because I always felt like there was just so much to do, so much to accomplish, and just so much unbalanced curiosity of how do I get out of this place? What's the next thing? So our nervous system is so important, and nervous system regulation, and I scream it from the rooftop. Like, I help people in two ways in my business. If you didn't know, I'm a psychic development teacher and I train healers. But the second part of my business is I help people with PTSD and walk them through the journey of healing that's like outside of the system, right? So when we come really wired in our body, there are all of these beautiful tools that I teach people. So, like, number one, somatic work. How do we actually feel our feelings and feel safe? Because our intuition, like, and I want you to imagine a DNA DNA, you know, those swirly things, the helium. Yeah, you guys got me. You guys are psychic, right? Your intuition is one strand of that. Then your emotions run beside that. Why? Because we all have 7 psychic clairs, right? And those clairs, to be claircognizant, to know something, you have to know how you are, because you need to know what's different. And clairsentient, the ability to feel someone else's emotion, is only ever overwhelming when we actually can't feel ourselves, right? It's not hard to be an empath. It's hard to be, and like an empath is very claircognizant, clairsentient, because that's like the second part of awakening, which you guys are going to see in this journey, right? It is overwhelming when you can't process your own, and it becomes easier to help process others, right? And that's what makes it hard, because it's uncomfortable to know that when you're upset, it generally takes an hour to process that emotion. And I mean, no TV. I mean, not going on a walk. I mean, like, actually sitting with that as a friend and going, you're a river and I'm going to let you pass today, right? It takes time. And we don't just need to cry. Sometimes we need to scream, and sometimes we need to shake, and sometimes we need to use these primal tools the world has gifted us from ancient knowledge. And so often these tools have been forgotten for a very good reason, because it's easier to keep us stressed and worried about the future, so we're not questioning about what's happening, right? So your nervous system, right, is so important to your journey. And we're going to skip down because the nervous system and number 3 go so well together. So many people treat spirit as like a crisis hotline, right? Let's go to a psychic when I have a breakdown, when I have a breakup, when I feel like it's not working, right? Instead, we sometimes sit with spirit. We're like, oh my God, give me the answers. Everything's wrong. Like, where's my tarot deck? Like, why isn't it working? When we're in these heightened states is when we're trying to use that spirit hotline. This is going against step 1 of only ever choosing to do psychic work in ventral vagal. So ventral vagal is the state. And I always say to people, like, ventral vagal is the state just before boredom. When was the last time you were bored? Right? Really think about it. The best way to be psychic is to be bored often. But we don't allow ourselves to reach that state because we're so conditioned and hardwired to be like, being lazy is bad, right? And boredom and laziness seem to go hand in hand, but you can be bored in a beautiful at the beach, right? But so often our minds don't allow boredom anymore because they've become these lists of concepts that run through our head that keep us thinking about the things in the future because we're all wired to be so worried, right? So when we are working with spirit, we want to be, and as I always say to my clients, like, if you're emotional, like, just like go cry, just go listen to your favorite song, go dance around the house, go do something else, because you're wasting your energy and you're wasting spirit's time, which is really not that important because they have infinite amount of time, right? But you're wasting your own desire and your own trust because you're like, I need it now. But spirit's going to be like, baby girl, drink some fucking water, have a shower, get out of that like armpit stink you have from going to the gym and rushing home from work. Like, they're going to tell you such basic shit. It's going to sound like it's coming from you anyway, because you actually have no emotional capacity to hold anything big, right? So I want you to understand the absolute best time to ever connect with spirit, right, is when you are happy, when you are joyful. And if you're one of those people who are like, I don't know when that is, and I don't know how to spend 25 minutes to bring myself joy, that is your start-based homework, right? Because what brings you joy raises your vibration, right? And your vibration has so much to do. And your vibration is a moving scale, right? And every day we have a homeostasis in our vibration, right? And if you don't know what the vibrational scale is, it's by Jerry and Esther Hicks. So Esther, I'm about to tell you a fib, but just if you Google the vibrational scale, it'll come up. You've probably seen it before on my Instagram page. But it is this scale that allows us to tell us how easy it is to connect to spirit in each moment. Anytime we're below boredom, fear, worry, anxiety, right? We're gonna struggle to connect because you are in that stressed out nervous system state, right? So when we feel like everything is good, right, that is when we need to connect to spirit. When everything is working out, this is when spirit will ask you to quantum leap and show you the big, freaking bold, inviting steps that you can take to live a really good life. So the other thing that's so important to psychic development work, and if you haven't really ever spent any time with me, you'll know that I don't just teach psychic development, right? I teach mind, body, spirit work. So I'm so big on somatic work. How do we process our emotions? Shadow work. How do I deal with the lens in which I see the world? Because your spirit team is talking to you through the current lens you see the world. So let's say there is a ship, and I want you to all feel into this. There is a ship in the middle of the ocean, and it would be kind of English water. So it would be kind of choppy and gray and not so nice, right? Whatever lens you see the world through those things. So if you see that as miserable and dreary just because I talked about the water being murky and you didn't come up with how the background looked and was that good or bad for you, right? Because you'll have an unconscious bias to how I spoke about that, right? And that's how you work with spirit, through your unconscious bias. So many people, and even when I started, and this is such a telling story, is that when I started working my spirit team, they were so mean. They were like, just do the thing, like get it done. Oh my gosh, Gabs. Like they were, and I thought it was so perfectly fucking normal. Do you want to know why? Because that's how I spoke to myself inside my mind. I was like, of course they have to be hard because that gives me like motivation. Because back then I wanted to lay in bed every single weekend and just like give myself a moment because I needed like a day in bed to finally process all that had happened in the week. Right? Not that I ever got the time to do that, but that was my desire. So they needed to be that for me. They needed to be this hard hitting naval character, sergeant, who was going to get me to a better place. And now that my spirit team are like, oh, like, my love, what are you doing? How is it going? How are you feeling? Like, I want to touch on those before we begin. And I'm like, fuck, we've come a long way. Right? And that's what spirit is. They are a metamorphosis and they are a part of you because psychic development, and if you don't know the 12 laws of the universe, I highly recommend you look them up. Okay? Because what they show us is the first law is the law of oneness. We are all made from the same stardust, right? We are all made from the same substance. And your spirit guides are you. They're not this concept outside of you, because the concept of living in a reality is we were once this huge grandmother, right? And grandmother was sitting there drinking her rose tea, looking at the marvelous universe for all that she could be. And I can guarantee you my guides are going to start riffing and rhyming right now. And grandmother was sitting there drinking her tea and she was all that has ever been. And she started to drink and seem, oh, wouldn't it have something so nice if only I had someone to speak to? But she'd never spoken in her life. She then took herself and split herself into two and realized that she became different because grandmother had existed for millions and millions of millennia before her. But this new version of her didn't know, didn't understand, and was so curious. And then that just kept multiplying and happening. And we put ourselves on these little earths and these planets at different places, some with bodies, some without, some where we remember all our past lives, some where we just exist as water and molecules. So we can have every understanding of existence, right? And we're on one of the densest planets. So we're here to experience just being alive. And so often we put these pressures on ourselves to become something, right? But the most spiritual thing we can do is allow ourselves to have the human experience in all of its totality. And that's what somatic work is. That's what your emotional work is. It's actually allowing yourself to be okay with having a human experience and having an emotive experience, right? Because that is the joy of this life. That is the reason this earth exists, to have heightened emotional experiences, right? To see the joy and the bliss and the pain and the dark, to have duality, right? And this is why our ego is so important, right? Because this is what we get to be human. We get an ego, we get a mind, body, spirit, and our mind is our ego, the part of us trying to keep us safe that makes us constantly question, right? And our ego only has 5 responses, and its job is to truly make sure that we never live out to our fullest potential. If you know that. And now our ego only has 5 things that it can do to stop us from becoming our superhuman, happy-go-lucky, beautiful self. So you want to write these down because this is the basis of true shadow work. Our ego will give us shame, blame, fear, guilt, or my great friend, confusion. Shame, blame, fear, guilt, or confusion. So anytime these ones come up in life, these feelings, hello, my old friend ego, how are you? Right? And think about it. When we're trying to connect to spirit, what do we get? Was that really my intuition? Confusion, fear. Am I just making this up? Is this real? Like, how can I trust this? My gosh, like, why didn't we create like a better human structure that like we have like a light bulb in our arm that goes off when we're like intuitive, right? That's what we want. Because being psychic is actually not about getting messages and being able to connect to your spirit team and do light language and become your own healer. You know what it fucking gives you? Self-trust, man. Like it actually gives you self-trust. And people ask me all the time, like I can just go pay a healer. Like, why would I want to learn that for myself? And I say to people, like, I don't know. Like sometimes I just watch people make decisions that take them like 3 days. And I'm just like sitting here being like, I'm going to trust myself that that's the right thing. And like, I mean, truly trust myself and trust that I am part of this huge, bigger concept and that there really is no death and there is nothing to fear in reality. That is the truest takeaway of being psychic. It's not these cool messages that seem out there. And trust me, don't get me wrong, it's cool for the first couple of years and it's cool for the rest of your life that you get to be of service. Like, don't get me fucking wrong. I love what I do and I love what I get. And I love, last night I finally used this tarot deck, just like side story that I've like used twice. I bought it for my birthday last year and I finally used it because I'd been living with my girlfriend and she has like the most amazing tarot decks while we were traveling. And I was shuffling these cards and I pulled this card and it was like Saturn return, astrology, someone's doing a reading for you. You need to like, and it was just like so spot on. And I just like sat there giggling because instead of reading it to get a message, you know the message because you are the message. You are always your message when you trust yourself, right? And you will always have everything you need. So your ego is 85% of the work in psychic development, right? And I know it's not something you hear often because everyone else is like, here, have this activation and here, like, do this like clearing. And if that really worked, we would all be walking around intuitive now because they're all over TikTok, right? The truth is how you think and how you see yourself and how much you can trust a part of yourself and how much you can trust in a concept greater than yourself is 85% of the work of psychic development. So, all right. Being psychic is a way of life. And now you're probably understanding because I've been through the top 3. If being stressed straight away takes our psychic awareness down to like 4%, right? We start to realize the work isn't in the closing our eyes and like opening our chakras and like praying, God, please connect to me. Like, I just need a spirit sign, because we're coming from a place when we're asking for spirit like that, we're coming from a place of fear, which is an unregulated nervous system, right? So all of these thoughts and prayers and divine guidance you're asking for needs to come from a place of assertiveness. Okay, I'm here now. I'm opening up. I'm going to trust that what comes through comes through. And like, I'm so big on teaching to open and close. Like, if you've ever been in my world, I believe that if you truly work on your mind, body, spirit, your nervous system, your ego, and how your poor gut health is, which is a huge part of things I talk to about my clients and how much caffeine we drink and all the things we do. Because honestly, if you're not shitting every day, and like, sorry to tell you, there's something wrong with your gut that infects your, like, that changes your hormones, that's going to put your nervous system back into the problem that it is to be anxiety causing. Psychic development isn't an alone system, it's a body system. And it works when we're in an optimal place, right? And that's why so many people want it, because they unconsciously know, well, if I've got it, I'm actually functioning from a pretty good place in my body. And that's why it's this big thing that people are like, I know I need to get connected, because it makes you happy and healthy and functionable if you truly allow yourself to get there, right? So when I talk to people about psychic development, I'm always going to ask, do you get enough sleep? Do you eat actual healthy food? Is it full of vitamins and minerals? Do you know what antibiotics are in your food? And ask these questions, right? We're about to live in a world of great change of food and health, and I'm very, very excited about it. I think we're really onto something, right? We're really all starting to wake up. We're just at 2% of the age of Aquarius. It's like a 200-year cycle. We're like year 2 in, and like almost, not really, we're like 5 years in, but like we're really like just at the start, guys. Like everyone's like, we're in the age of Aquarius, like big things are going to happen. We're not at 50% yet. We're actually only at the pinnacle where we're only starting to see that our problems are created by us, because we no longer take self-responsibility, because our life is in the asleep state. We don't see that there's we don't see there's possibility it's going to get better, right? All right, I got to speed this up, says Spirit. So being psychic is what you do in your everyday life. It is not a practice that you do once a week hoping to connect, right? So I remember when I became psychic, I was like, I changed my whole diet. And like, there is a list of 10 messages, and I'm going to give them to you, that Spirit gives people when they truly start to connect. Take a breath, go to yoga, eat better, hydrate, right? They start to give these basic bitch lessons, right? And you've maybe already gotten these, but until you're consistent in acting these messages, you will never get more, because your nervous system, your ego can't hold them, right? Because they're actually, being psychic is a roadmap. It's like Monopoly, right? You've got to roll a dice, then you've got to move the thing, then you've got to decide if you're going to do it, right? And act on that message. Then you've got to wait for your turn again and keep doing the thing and paying attention, right? Spirit messages are not like a, oh my gosh, for a week. Then we're back to square one. Then Spirit's going to give you the same message, girl. And then you get frustrated, right? Got the same shit. Fuck. Like, it must be me. I've already got this message, right? It's not the message, it's the action. And Spirit doesn't want to waste your time. And it doesn't want to keep repeating the same thing, because it's still trying to press send on the message. You're just either not believing it, actioning it, or doing it, because your messages compile into an intuitive psychic life, right? We have to action each one and give it the steps that it needs. So after this call, you're going to come in here and you're going to go file, make a copy, right? You're going to save it to your own Google Drive. Don't know how many times my poor clients have had their work shared by everyone. So don't forget to do that. And you're going to come in here and be like, what are the top 3 steps I'm going to take, right, to start moving the needle for me? Because I'm sure there's a million ideas you've got from this masterclass. Then if you want to, you can email me at hello@gabriellebentley.com, or you can just chuck it on Instagram and tell me, because I want to be your accountability buddy. Because at the end of the day, I do this work because I never stopped having nightmares of my reoccurring trauma, right? Every 1 to 2 nights until I was exhausted that I would finally sleep through a night. And I've done lots of weird and wonderful things to fix that. But the best thing I ever did was understand from actually actioning my messages, which is what actually is probably the only thing that makes me different to everyone else trying to become intuitive, is that when my spirit team were like, go to yoga, I was like, okay, well, does that count if I do it at home outside when shit's hard? And if I do 2 minutes instead of an hour, I'll be okay with that. Right? I didn't hold myself to these unrealistic high expectations, right? I allowed myself to realize that life is life. And it's hard for a fucking good reason, because this is one of the quickest planets we learn, right? Because when we go away from here and we go into our Akashic records, where we go when we die, into the library of the souls of lives, and when we read our books and we understand, why did we make those changes and those choices, right? That's where we finally learn our lessons. The lessons aren't learned here. The lessons are learned in the retrospective living, right? So don't be too hard on yourself, right? But let me know the action plan you're going to take to start committing to your own mind, body, spirit, because that will help you move the needle to becoming intuitive, regardless of however you choose to do it. All right. The 8 levels of personal development. So, psychic development and personal development go hand in hand, my friends. You cannot do one without the other. That's why I just call it PD, because we all love ourselves some personal development from our psychic development. And if you're not getting that, that's why your intuition isn't getting anywhere, because you're not actually changing yourself. And to be psychic is to be your most authentic, true self at a high vibing state, and where every molecule in your body is ready to listen, receive, and take action, regardless of fear. Because if you're not ready to take the action that you receive, right? Why bother? Like, truly, like, why bother? Because it's just like you picked up your phone to your best friend and you're like, oh my God, give me your advice. And she's like, break up with your boyfriend. And you're like, yeah, no, I can't do that. Thanks so much. Bye. There was no point. There was none. Spirit's there for a really good reason to push your needle. And if you use them like that, you will live a fucking extraordinary life that most people will tell you, like, wow, that's incredible, right? And it is, because you realize that the resistance you have to spirit is the fear that you're going to have to move, right? And that's people's biggest resistance to spirit, is that things are going to have to change. And not change to get intuitive, because you are that by nature under the societal conditioning. But spirit's going to ask you to do big and fucking scary things. So I want to run through with you the 8 levels of psychic development, hopefully in the next 30 minutes. So we're going to be a bit over. You know me, love to talk. So level 1, disconnection, the asleep state. So when people say they wake up and they just become conspiracy theorists and they still live in fear, they are not awake. Okay. Awake is conscious. All right. So you know how people always like, we want to become conscious. Let me explain that to you. We have our ego self, our fear, worry, shame, blame, guilt, and we have ourself who makes decisions and is aware that there is a light in front of me and that it's 7:42 and that I'm slightly hungry because I haven't drunk my morning cacao. Right? But the part of me that's also really excited that I get out hungry every day of my life. right? Because that's a goal I've been working on for such a long time. So that part of our consciousness, right, goes to sleep when we're overwhelmed, shame, blame, fear, guilt, or confused. Because anytime we're in fight or flight, you know, when we like look at someone and there's like no real lights on, and you're like, are you just moving from like fear and caffeine? They are. They don't want to think. Do you know people who are too scared to look at their bank account? Or like too scared to take true any form of responsibility, because what happens is their body actually goes into survival and it believes that it's being chased by a tiger. Because we don't have the historical factors that used to put our body into survival. It's moved into modern survival. Emails, text messages, asking a person out. Sure, that probably did it back in the day too. But it's really moved into these high touch point things that just never ending go off, right? Work, those kind of things. Like, is there enough money for the future, right? These concepts. And then start to think about it, like, how many times a day do we think about these things? And people who live in fear and anxiety, the answer is always, right? And you're not avoiding it by becoming conscious. You're actually willing to have a look at it and be like, okay, well, that's stressful. Let's look at that next Tuesday, right? Consciousness is choosing to do things from a space of, I'm here and I'm aware, I'm living. And if living is hard, and this is the biggest thing I've ever learned. And if you don't know, I love Tantra as a theoretical study. It gave me a lot that I learned from when I used to do Ashtanga. And I'm so blessed for my teacher because he was one of those people who helped me start this business. And he always said in class, he was like, if you are scared of death, you'll be scared of living. And that is exactly what a sleep stage is, right? If you're scared of death, you will be scared of living to any full extent, because anything that's really fun and exciting and exhilarating comes with great risk, right? And if you're scared of any risk, if you're scared of taking change, and anyone's scared of change, right? You can chuck them in the asleep state at least 50% of the time, right? That's how easy this is, right? Because if we're scared of, I remember people used to say to me all the time, like, you're just going to go live in another country. Like, aren't you scared? And I was like, no, I'm kind of scared of being the same. Like, I'm scared of, what if this is it? What if it's this easy all the time? Right? And when we say to people like, you're so brave or you're so crazy, we're saying to them, fuck, you're excited to live. Right? So the asleep state is where we feel like we are totally disconnected from spirit, and there's really no point to live other than the fact we're evading death because we're scared of the other side. Right? Gut feelings probably pop in, and we feel like we shouldn't do that thing, but we ignore it. Right? Then level 2, and if you guys have questions on this, chuck them in the chat because I will answer them. Level 2, the empath. Oh, this is my favorite one. So empaths is a huge sign that you've been a healer, a seer, a teacher in a past life, and you've been incarnating for a fucking while, right? Now, being an empath in this current lifetime and existence, and please hold what I'm about to say with compassion, love, and curiosity, because this is really challenging to 90% of people. For 80% of empaths, it's a fucking coping mechanism. I don't feel safe in my body. So as a child or as a later adult, I'm going to learn to open up and feel you so I know how to give you what you think you need so you love me. It's our fawn response. when we don't feel safe. And a lot of humans in this current incarnation don't feel very safe, right? We're not living in communities where we get coaching from our ancestors. We're not in a place where anything is important other than money, right? And we're not in that tribal community any longer. So we're all just trying to please people to feel safe. So when we are empathic, there's two ways it generally comes through. We have 7 psychic clairs, but the first one is clairsentient, right? Which is I feel you. But a lot of empaths are actually claircognizant. I just know what to say or know what to do. And these are the two biggest, and there is a pretty big split between them. Clairsentient being the truest empath, 70% of the people, but the other 40, 30, whatever, are knowing what to do, what to say, and what to say to someone else to make them feel better. That's the biggest one I get. Now, why is empath level 2? Well, you're already fucking psychic. So you're probably wondering like, but I am that thing. Now, you're going to really get to the bottom of this and see a bigger picture if you haven't already slid to the bottom. But it's actually because empaths are doing it for a state of survival. Now, what is psychic development? Authenticity, choosing to take and accept change, feeling fully empowered and aware, right? So for a lot of people, being an empath is about feeling safe. And until they realize they don't feel unsafe and work on that, they will remain in the empathic state. Because to go from an empath to a psychic is a lot of self-responsibility. I'm going to learn to open my chakra system. I'm going to start to become a self-healer. I'm going to deal with my emotions first. And most empaths actually can't deal with their own emotions. They don't have the emotional coping skills. Like most people, like I tell them, what do I do when I'm sad? I cry into a pillow. I have a rage fit. And I spend a minimum hour with myself anytime I feel a big emotion. Most people put on Netflix and hope this too shall pass. Because the actual skill, this part took me 5 years to master. Right? And we go, there is no class in school. There is no one to really hold space for us other than a counselor, and they want to hear things, not hold space for our emotions. And I'm not saying counseling is bad. Fucking changed my life and gave me so much perspective and taught me to give everyone the dignity of their own respect. If you've ever heard that speech, love that concept. But this is the thing and the skill that most people are missing, is that we think being empathic is just about boundaries for others. I need you to step back. I need you to not talk about that. I need you to like get out of my space. I need to be alone. The boundary is with self. I'm not going to let this happen anymore. I'm going to take deeper responsibility. I have a fucking gift because I am a light worker, and I'm going to do something about it. Okay? Because that's what the empathic gift is asking for, right? You don't feel other people's emotions just because it opened as a fight or flight response, okay? It opened because you've done this before in other lives. That is just the seed and the sadness we're living in, that is currently the awakening, because we're not sitting in red tents anymore being like, oh my gosh, sister, your intuition is so needed. And now we're here in our tent, heightened together. Let me teach you the way. Right? So it has to come from a bad situation, because there is not a lot of good situations that it's going to come from. Like, who just randomly stumbles into a psychic development class and is like, oh, I might just be in the right place? There is none. It doesn't happen. Or they're just following them thousands of people on TikTok and they're trying to do it, but there is no actual support. And without the support, right, without the actual education and the knowledge, there is no way to move the needle, because psychic development needs space for your past stories to flow out of you, to have space for that new self-trust. So, anyways, that's all I've got to say on empaths. Then we get to a place, and most people are empathic and will continue to call themselves empathic until we get to level 5, right? So just be aware of that. Internal activation. This is where someone starts to get downloads, and I'm going to call them spirit messages, though sometimes they're just energetic downloads that come in and they don't have to be from spirit. And they start dropping in randomly. Now, this is really important. They drop in the shower, when you're driving, when it's quiet, when you've finally got a second for yourself. Okay. It's not when you're begging for them. It's when you're finally in ventral vagal. Like, there's the answer. That's it. When you're finally chilled out, there's the answer. It will always appear. Work on that first, and you will always have answers, right? So you're getting physical sensations as well, like ears ringing, which is a sign that your spirit guides are like, oh my God, I want to talk to you. Can you like make some space for me? Because that's the phone ringing, right? This is why I always use the metaphor of the phone. And you get chills maybe during downloads, but even a better thing I should have written there is you get chills when people say the truth. AKA what I call truth bumps, AKA how I live my life. Anytime I get truth bumps, that's a sign. Yes, right? So the cracked door is when you're starting to receive in, but it doesn't feel like it's equal exchange or there's really any point to it, because it's like these random downloads, and generally at the point you're so exhausted because they're only coming in the good times. I can tell that you're living in the bad times, and there is no energy, vitality, or substance to really allow you to act on those messages, because there is no true self-responsibility, no internal self-ownership, because we're still influenced by the external world at such a high degree. Because until you deal with your own emotional body, life is really fucking hard. Just here to be real with you. If you haven't read my testimonials, Gabs will tell you what's real. That's all I get. I love it. All right. So then we move on to the reflective mirror. This is where people take their empathic abilities to scale. Now, there's a lot of readers out there who will read for someone else but won't be able to read for themselves. Now, these people are to be very wary of. And a question I would be asking lots of readers, if they don't know how to read for themselves, I want to be doing it. Like I say to my clients, if you can't read for yourself, don't read for others, right? It is my number one belief system, because the reason they can read for others and not themselves is it's because it's not going through their emotional body, right? And they don't have to deal with their own emotions. They're just tapping into an external subject where they're finally getting relief and a different form of energy that feels good from their life, right? Because it almost is, it's escapism, right? So when we're able to read for others, there is no personal attack. I just started reading and I was like, I don't even know if I need to read. But people will be really good at spot on reading for others. And this also kind of goes up to when we're empathic and we know what to say to someone else, we just claircognizantly know. We know what to say, right? And we just let it fall out. This is because you're tapping here into level 4. And that there, when you know what to say, you're trans channeling some entity or being who's giving you the direct download. So you're a trans channeler by nature. Trans channeling is going to become really big. So think of Bashar, think of Jerry and Esther Hicks, think of the White Eagle. These are channelers, right? And they channel wisdom from other sources. We have aliens living on our planets coming out of the ocean, and we're channeling them, right? A higher consciousness. We're not alone. The earth is not going to explode. We're not going to have a nuclear war because they're not going to let us. Good things are coming, okay? I promise you, some good things are coming, right? And when we're only reading for others, it's because our internal world is still chaotic. And that's what psychic development really needs, is peaceful internal world. Oh, here's my spelling mistake. Then we move on to reading for ourselves. We're flipping our mirror onto our internal self. This is where everyone wants to be, but then they realize there's 4 levels of work to get here, right? Because this takes self-trust. This isn't a pendulum. This isn't pulling a yes, no card. This isn't going, I'll see it when I believe it. This is when we start to go, you said it and I can make it because I'm the manifester. I'm the creator. I am powerful, right? This is when we start to kind of split into this better positive mindset that comes with being psychic, right? So we start to trust our downloads, even if they're uncomfortable, and we realize they're uncomfortable. So we're able to hold them a little bit longer, right? We're able to let self-doubt linger, right? But we're not going to get attached to it. So here, trust is the practice, not the switch. So we're not switching in our fear to connect. We're only going in when we feel like we can trust to connect. All right. Then we move on to level 6. Now, this is where things get really interesting because calling cards come in. So calling cards is once you've learned, and if you ever do any of my courses, my fundamental teaching is to be psychic, you should be your own healer. So to do that, we learn how to work with our chakra system and become a psychic healer in all of my courses. So every course, you'll learn how to become a psychic healer, where you open and close your chakra system. Now, that gives you a really good understanding of where you're at, right? And it shows you that what's happening in your body every single day. So like yesterday, I was opening my chakras because yesterday I had 4 readings. It was a really fun day and quite a few discovery calls. It was like so epic. I feel so blessed after yesterday. And I opened my root chakra and there was this beautiful big crack in it, right? And I was like, cool, magic. What is that? I was so curious about it because I know I didn't have the day before, right? And you start to become this living, breathing oracle of your own body. And don't get attached to the fact I had a crack in my chakra system. It's a very normal, regular occurrence, right? It's just because I was tired and I've been living on a 4-hour different time zone than the current city I'm living in. And I am tired and I was feeling out of balance, right? But when you start to have these deeper connections to your own chakra system and to your own auric field, you become your own healer because you become so self-aware, right? You start to be able to go, okay, well, why is that? And what actually, when we go to a healer, it's really amazing, like a psychic Reiki or a psychic healer, or we go to any form of intuitive. It's amazing because they're telling you things you don't know because you're unconscious at some level, right? And maybe you do know because you're semi-conscious and you're like, I feel like I do know all those things. And I feel like these are all awarenesses I've had lately, right? Because you've become conscious, right? When you do that for yourself, it's not just the surface level stuff. It's the everyday life stuff. And that's where life gets interesting because you're actually able to change your life day to day and see the big impacts happen right before your eyes. So once we open up and we start to get to this level of calling cards, is where you actually start to build a dictionary with your spirit team to know who you're talking to at what time, right? So imagine every spirit guide gets a phone number. So then you have true relation with things outside of you. And because you now have the capacity to have a relationship with yourself, you can now have that outside of yourself. When we get to this level, things that are really important to understand is your attachment style, however your attachment style is. And if you don't know your attachment style or your love language, they're 2 things I highly recommend you find out that are in all of my courses. Because if you're anxious attachment, you're not going to feel safe connecting to your spirit team every time. Because you're going to be anxious, like, will you turn up today? Can I trust you? If you're avoidant, you're going to just want to connect to your spirit team when there's a 911 crisis, right? And there's a whole other lot of different things that fall into there, but you really need to understand that however you have relationships in your real life, and this is why shadow work is so important, because it teaches you how to have healthy, safe relationships. It asks you to actually process your relationships. How do you leave friendships? How do you leave relationships? Do you just get up and run? Do you have a conversation about it? Do you leave in a messy fight? Whatever that is, right? That is how you will relate to your spirit team. And they're the incoming signals that your body's going to get and expect, right? Because you're always viewing life through your own lens. And this is why psychic development and personal development go hand in hand. All right. Then we move on to level 7, which is living like a channel. This is where intuition guides your choices seamlessly. You feel shifts and actually start to manifest them. Like, people say to me, like, what's the point of being psychic? And I say, to be the fucking creator of your own reality, right? Because if you can emotionally hold yourself, like, sometimes I ring people or better yet, people are here when I'm emotional and they're just like, oh my gosh, your life is like falling apart. And I was like, no, honey, I'm just having a bad moment. And I know that, right? And I know deep down where so many people are so scared of their emotional bodies, right? That they're running from them because it's too scary to look at the past, right? And they're holding onto it because it's too big to be seen. It's never too big because you've already seen it with your own 2 eyes, right? And if you've seen it with your own 2 eyes once, you can see it again and again until you make it feel safe in your nervous system and in your body, right? But until we feel like we can receive any incoming message that's big and scary and like, okay, start a business and quit your job in 2 weeks, because that's what happened to me. I had 2 weeks to quit my job before I had 5 weeks worth of readings booked in. I didn't have any money saved and I just had to take a trust, right? Until you can be like, spirit's like, okay, move overseas. You have no other options because you need to go and learn all these things. And you go, okay, well, sure. I don't know how that's going to work out, but let me pack my bag for you. Until you can really allow yourself to hold big motherfucking messages, right? You're never going to be able to live as a channel, right? Because a channel is full trust. And so many people want to be a channel, right? This is where intuition guides you and you listen, right? You start to feel energetic shifts before things manifest. You start to truly feel positive collective consciousness, because most people can only pick up what they are and what feels safe, which is fear, right? So many people like, but like, don't you pick up on the collective consciousness energy? And I'm like, yeah, in what's attuned to me, because we get a choice, right? And answers start to arrive easily. So when we want to be the psychic channel, we have to do each level of work for here. All right. Then level 8 is the master channel. Now, this is somewhere I've only started to understand recently. Now, the biggest thing I understood about this when I started to be like, and it's taken me a long time, because I think I wrote up to here a year and a half ago, right? This has been a long going process, right? I've been teaching for a long time like now, and I've been living this way for a long time now. When I've gotten to the master channel, do you know what the master channel is? Having unwavering faith that no matter what disaster strikes in your life, there is no blockage you can't fix to be intuitive and reconnect that day. Right? That no matter how sick I am, this year I got diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. If you didn't get to read that long-winded email sequence I did, I got diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. It's called a histamine intolerance. And for 6 months in the last year, I didn't get out of bed every day. Right? And for a week, I couldn't open my eyes. And for about 2 weeks, I couldn't walk because I had this horrible rash on my feet that just itched and scratched. And so many of my clients go, what do I do when my intuition goes down because I'm sick? It shouldn't. It doesn't need to. We get sick, and I'm so grateful I got sick because it actually revealed to me the biggest trauma in my life I've never been able to see. And it gave me language because I needed all of that time. I needed to build a team of people who would help me run my business when I couldn't. I needed to learn that level of support, right? It was such a fucked up, amazing human learning experience for me. And I'm so grateful for it. It also showed me how quickly we can heal. If we truly believe healing is possible, and trust me, I didn't even go to a doctor. I did see a doctor who did say, yes, you have a histamine intolerance, after I'd figured it out with the help of all of these amazing eczema coaches and all of these incredible people. But they will tell, the doctor said, this is like something you live with now. And I was just like, no, it's not. It's not. I'm not going to live with this. I'm going to fix it. And I'm probably like 95% the way there. How quickly, like in every Reddit thread, I had people living with it for 4 or 5 years before they ever got any relief. And I'm here probably 4 months in going, well, if I just don't eat that, I'm okay. Right? When you are the great channel and you are the awakened in your channel, it's realizing you have the recipe book for life because it's coming directly from source, right? You start to activate others just by them being in your presence. And that's what a transmission is. So if you've ever heard the word spiritually transmission, it is that someone's energy, because we only have 3 options in life. So let me just break you down life super duper quick. We're asleep. We bring light to ourselves, which is what a fair amount of the population is doing, or we bring light to the collective, right? These are our 3 options. Took me a long time to learn this. I had to ask a lot of people, right? They're our only 3 options. So life's really fucking simple when we realize we've got 3 options. The third is the funnest. Trust me, I've tried all 3. The first is the hardest because we're just avoiding ourselves at all levels. We're busy by to-do lists. We're just trying to have purpose of existence. We're not feeling our purpose. We're feeling disconnected because the purpose is living. The purpose is joy. The purpose is gratitude. The purpose of living isn't to have a morning practice to feel good. The purpose of living is to feel good, right? And when we are in this master channel, we are able just to lead through our life. I'm not teaching you anything I don't live by. I'm not teaching you something great I channeled. I'm teaching you everything I've learned since 2017, right? I'm not teaching you something I had to go and meditate for. And I think so often that's what we think psychics do. It's actually a way of living. It's who we are and who we get to be if we truly allow ourselves to live the life we know we dream instead of settle. Because when we settle, we get discomfort because we're all not meant to be the same year in and year out. We're meant to be an evolving being. So when we go home to the life in between, we have this big motherfucking book. Not this little book that's like Jane repeated the same thing as yesterday. But it's this book of like, yeah, she learned this, she learned that, she saw this, she saw that. So we have context. And hopefully enough context to remember how hard it was to remember. So we might give ourselves some more grace in between, but we love living, right? Souls love to live in the human plane. And we forget that when we're here because it seems so hard, because we're told safety first. And I'm not telling you to go skydive, right? But I'm not saying it's not fun either because I love it. But I hope this inspires you. Does anyone have any questions as we kind of start to wrap up today's session? If you do, you can chuck them in the chat. If you want, you can just simply unmute. But I just want to hold space for that. I'm going to have a sip of my morning cacao.
Gabs, I'll just say that this has been fantastic and super helpful, and I've really appreciated the time that spent through this. And for me, I feel like I'm at a 3 because I've started getting the ringing in my ears, and I didn't even know that that was a thing until you mentioned that. So just it was a great takeaway for me. So thank you.
No worries at all. I'm so glad that could give you like such a big awareness of like, holy shit, spirit's ringing my phone. And now I need to go and answer it and take some time to do that. And like I always say to people, like, so many people ask me, like, what do I do if I don't sign up with your courses? And I'm like, I get it. My courses are expensive because I want to quantum leap you what's taken me since 2017 within in a minuscule of a year. Right. Um, and sorry, I was just reading Kat's message. So when you're like, okay, my ear's ringing, I want you to go and look up the ventral vagal chart. And I want you to go on YouTube. How do I get into ventral vagal? My number one quickest answer for that is to give you like an answer right now. I want you to go put 30 minutes aside and I want you to turn your phone off. I want you to try and be away from the kids. And I want you to just be outside in nature, laying on the grass. And if you can, use mullah beads or come up with a mantra that's like, I am open and ready for the message. And I want you to
So if
say
it's like 5 degrees outside and snow, is there an option to do something different at this time than
100%,
instead of playing in snow?
100%. Please do it inside with a candle on by
Okay,
yourself.
so that'll work. Okay.
And like, I love, I am like a huge headphone person because as soon as you start to hear other people in your house, you're like, oh my God, I'm so distracted. Right. So, like, I'm an Apple headphone girly for being in really loud situations, though I hate EMF. So, I do also say that, like, I'm still on the little like AirPlug plugins. But if you can have noise quiet, it helps immensely. And like you're not opening and closing your chakra and you haven't actually got the like deeper skills, but just being in a place of boredom will really allow you to start to escalate those downloads. But it's kind of until we get to the reading for ourselves is where we really need to have really strict structured tools and system in places to start to be able to become, because when we start to read for ourselves is when we're fully intuitive. So until then, guys, really find boredom, because then you're going to be in ventral vagal, you're going to be curious, and you're going to want something to change because there's going to be space for change to come into your life. Does that help, Jody?
So much so. Thank you so much.
No worries. All right. So Kat said, yes, so sorry for coming in late. Absolutely no worries. The replay will be in the hub and I will send you this document as well. And it will also be in the hub, but let me just like drop it now for you so you can have it. There you go.
Amazing.
That's also, you probably missed. There is a little thing to do here. If you want to do a final reflection, just make sure you go file, make a copy. Pretty, pretty, please. Um, Alexandra said, thank you so much. I needed that reminder for myself in the state I think I'm in right now, and that is make space and practice. Yes, I'm so glad. If any of you have taken this and you're like, Gabs, I really want to get past level 5 and I want to live a super fucking intuitive life, I am currently rerunning psychic school, which you probably heard. It was my first ever initial course that I did. Right. And if you go to the website, you can read the reviews from then. I haven't run this course in 3 years. Right. And it is actually turning into a 6 month program. You get 2 calls a month with me where I'm going to show you how to be intuitive. You're going to learn psychic healing and how to connect to your guides and get calling cards in that 6 months. Right. The current cost for the 6 month program is 1,555 Australian dollars. Like, remember, I'm an Aussie girly, right? So that's got a 10-month payment plan if it's something you want to do, and it's going to get you to level 6 to the mark of spirit, right? It's also going to teach you basic nervous system girly techniques such as EFT tapping, butterfly tapping, how to get regulated. We're going to go through how do you feel your feelings. So it's a pretty short course with quite a few modules in the back end that you guys get to watch. but it's that 6 months of continuous practice. So if that's something you want to do, the full course will be 3K at the end before we start, because it's not starting till halfway through this year. That's why it's at such a ridiculous price, right? So if this is something you want, that is the option. There is my payment plan is on my website for 10 months. If you're like, Gabs, this is what I fucking want to do and I can't make 10 months work, message me. We'll figure something out. Like, I say to people all the time, like, you have no idea what you're going to get out of psychic development. Because if I look at my life, I'm a trained graphic designer, right? And Spirit has told me to start 3 businesses, and I have, and I loved each and every one of them. I was so dyslexic by the time I left high school. I didn't think I would go to university. I didn't think I would be able to do anything. And my goal for my life was to scan groceries at the checkout. And I look back at who I've become, like, and I literally look at myself and I go, I would have never fucking been here if it wasn't for my intuition. And I never would have lived a life of extraordinary things. And I'm only 30, right? And I look at myself and I go, holy shit. And it's because being psychic makes you a good human, because it makes you open to receiving life. It gives you surrender. Like, I have it tattooed on my hand, like in my prayer, right? It gives you the ability to surrender to a good life instead of living in panic and worry and anxiety. So I hope you can see the actual true benefit of being psychic. And if you want, you can send this to any family or friends or any intuitive sisters you have. It would mean the absolute world to me. But honestly, I want to thank you for hanging out with me today. I hope you guys have some amazing things planned for the rest of the day if you're in Oz, or the evening if you're in America. But until next month we have a Kundalini awakening session. I'm 98% positive it. And then the month after is what to do if I know I'm meant to be a healer. So there you go. Spirit just gave me that. So we were correct. So it will be updated in the community portal, and it will be on Instagram. And hopefully I get to see you for that, because that's going to be really, really fun. Because like, a really big thing we get from living as a psychic channel is the fact that we actually learn how to use our Kundalini every day. And that is the power of opening and closing your chakra system, is to actually learn how to bring the energy to the top of your head, because you have actual energetic awareness, right? A Kundalini awakening isn't something that should just happen one day. It's something I do maybe 3 or 4 times a week, right? And when people get this perspective, they're like, what do you mean? And I was like, yeah, well, how else do I have the energy to like go and do all this stuff that like Spirit's like, we're going to create this course and we're going to go do that. And you're going to buy a car and then you're going to start running events every weekend. And I'm like, cool. Well, thanks for showing me the car. I'm going to go buy it at 12. But like, where do I run these events? And they've given me a list this morning. It's like, okay, I'm going to go get my shit. I'm going to get it together. And I probably couldn't have done that if I didn't get up at 4 this morning and have a beautiful Kundalini awakening, bringing all that energy to the top of my head. This is why psychic development is so important, because it should be giving you this energy to go and do life, right? And that's what we're missing, is this oomph to go and live, because we don't have the tools to connect to that. Anyways. Ooh, my internet cut out, but hopefully you heard me. Magic. All right, guys, I'm going to see you next month for the Kundalini activation. I'm going to talk so much more about it. Also, to let you know, you guys will be the first to know, I actually am coming now that I'm home and it's like easy, and I haven't been on my podcast since Bali, but the Activate Your Intuition podcast is coming back at the end of next month. So if you've never listened to my podcast, I still have like 180 people listen to it a week. So apparently it's still a thing. Thank you, everyone who listens to it. It's coming, and it's going to be there for you each week as a reminder, as this much information, as a transmission to remind you that there is better ways of living this life that can inspire and give you the energy you need to not just survive, but to ultimately thrive. All right, my loves. I'm going to see you in the hub. Hopefully, I chat to you on Instagram or email. I can't wait to see what you're going to take into your life so you can be super intuitive.